Meeting will come to order. Welcome to everyone joining us on this July 1st Rutherford County School Board meeting. Leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be Mr. Kyle Prince.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Prince, and you'll be introduced a little later too in the program. Tonight, during our moment of silence, we'd like to remember Mr. Rick Powell. His mother, Sarah Elizabeth Powell, passed away on July 20th. Mr. Powell is our principal at Smyrna High School. Also, we'd still like to remember the families that have been affected by the tragedy in Chattanooga. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would join the board in a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, and again, we'll keep all of these people in our prayers. And this is kind of an unusual meeting night. Most of the work session was last night, and of course the board meeting tonight. And we have a summer conference, a summer law conference this weekend. So the meetings had to be moved forward a bit. So again, we met last night with work session and talked about a number of items, but we'll go back through. Approval of the agenda. Mr. Hodge?
Second.
Second by Ms. Moore. Comments or questions? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Estes and Mr. Holliday, comments or questions? Of course, the three names have been added that we talked about last night. Board approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we got to go through all these pages. Any visitors? Okay, no visitors tonight. Mr. Odom, number 7, get recognized.
Yes, I'm very pleased. I'm going to ask Mr. Prince to come back up to the mic a minute. Kyle Prince teaches at Central Magnet School, and he was selected to be on Governor Haslam's inaugural teacher cabinet. They've had one meeting already. He is also up for a Math Science Award as one of the top in the state. It's going on to Washington. We don't know about that one yet, but very, very good representative of the quality of teachers we have in Rutherford County. Mr. Prince, tell them a little bit about, you've had one meeting with the governor about what kind of questions are being asked, or have you been sworn to silence? I don't know how that works.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So there are 4 main topics that we discussed on July 16th. We met for about 2 hours. The first one was standards, and then assessment, evaluations, and then finally just opened it up and said, if you were to wanted to tell the governor anything, what would it be? And so there were 18 teachers from around the state that gathered that day, and it was kind of interesting to hear from the different counties and different districts what was happening in those districts, and some said this and some were saying the opposite, and so it was kind of interesting to hear what was happening in each of those districts. There were a couple of main things that I kind of took away from it that day. One was as we transitioned to TN Ready across the state, the Commissioner of Education, Candace McQueen, really told us to take back to our districts and say, make sure that we are telling our parents about TN Ready, and the state has a whole set of documents for parents, and so they really wanted us to go back to our districts and disseminate those to our parents and tell about that. And then the second thing I wanted to, I guess, talk about today was, I want to get feedback from other teachers across the county. And, that when I went July 16th, I didn't feel like I had a great deal of knowledge about what other teachers thought in the district. And so I'd like to somehow get an idea from them what they are feeling towards those things and many other state issues as well.
The board members might have something want to suggest to him too, since he has.
I suggest you speak with Mr. Hodge. He is our legislative liaison there, and I think if you wanted to talk with any of us individually, I have many messages for the governor. Since you seem to have his ear,
Well, there was a time at the end he said, if teachers say all the time, if I only had a chance to tell the governor this, and so he opened it up at the end and said, if you want to tell me something, tell me. So he was very open and willing to listen. So
Did you feel like you developed a rapport with Commissioner?
I think with altogether 20 of us in the room, just in those 2 hours, we were able to kind of learn about each other and where we're from and what we teach and all that. But I think it's going to take some time to develop that rapport. But they really focused on the beginning at saying we're open. This is not necessarily a place where we want to hear what we want to hear. We want to hear what you think and what your districts are saying and those types of things. So it was very informal as it can be atmosphere.
I think our impression of Commissioner McQueen has been very, very good, and that she just needs to be communicated with, and we just need to take advantage of those opportunities to share with her.
And as part of the being selected to the 9 left in the Teacher of the Year, I was also appointed to the Teacher Advisory Council, and so that's with just Commissioner McQueen. And so I guess I'll have 2 opportunities. So I really want to hear from other teachers what's happening and what our thoughts are.
One of the things that we talked about that we've passed along through the commissioner and all, remember 2 years ago, the governor made a special appropriation of $50 million across the whole state of Tennessee for technology. Remember that in preparations for TN Ready and that sort of thing. And I know that superintendents and others have said across the state, it would really be nice with the cost of TN Ready, and you could see Rutherford County, we had $3 million this year that we're to try to get enough computers to do it, that would he consider again in building his budget probably some things to help school districts come back up with the technology. I've heard pleasantly that he is also interested in teacher salaries and some things to try to draw people to Tennessee in the profession. So that's been very encouraging, I think, in that. So likely when you talk to teachers, they'll probably share that with you also. But I'm just glad he's open and asking, and I'm glad our Commissioner of Education is now asking and open, because when she meets with the superintendents, she asked us to prioritize some things. Teacher salaries was one of those, the competitive now and also. We'll see how it plays out, but they are asking for input, and that's encouraging.
Definitely.
Mr. Prince, I will say, speaking for myself, not for the entire board, but I've talked with Mr. Odom and others, and you certainly have the credentials. You have the confidence of this board member, and I believe of Rutherford County Schools. And so in that setting, I want to encourage you to be bold and just be very forthright. If the thought crosses your mind, don't be humble or cautious. Step right out and tell them, because your opinion in that room from this board member is the most important opinion in that room, because the 42,000 students in Rutherford County are some of the highest achieving, most forward-thinking students in this state. And what you contribute to that room I believe will have an enormous impact on what happens. Mr. Odom's reputation is held in high regard at the state offices, and by proxy, you walk into that room with a significant impact, and I want you to use it boldly.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
With 143 school districts in the state and us having a representative on it, speaks very well for Mr. Prince and Central Magnet. Has Dr. Ash at Central Magnet given you any instructions yet or anything?
We discussed, yes, some things, yes.
Congratulations, and we're very pleased and proud for you to represent us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, number 8, we received the insurance report from Ms. Street last night, and I believe we all absorbed quite a bit of information. I called Ms. Street this morning and thanked her for taking time out of her day to be with us and sharing information. I did remind her that this was not going to be the only time that we had conversations with her, that this board was certainly interested in the cost and the coverage of the medical coverage for all of our employees. So I reminded her we are interested. So she'll expect us to continue to call on her. So, number 9, Mr. Odom.
Number 9 is a textbook adoption for a book not on the state list, which requires board approval. It's Form ED 5196, local adoption of textbooks not on contract. The Instruction Department is requesting approval for local adoption of textbooks not on contract, which are not included in the official list of textbooks. The first one is Better Chinese, which is Discovering Chinese, Volume 1 for grades 6 through 12. And then the second one is Better Chinese again, Discovering Chinese, Volume 2, grades 6 through 12. And we discussed last night that Confucius Institute's furnishing a teacher for this. It's a textbook for the students. These books are for the Central Magnet students that are taking Chinese. So the recommend approval of the motion is for Rutherford County to request approval for adoption of the textbooks listed above.
With the motion,
So move.
Jordan. Mr. Hodge, further comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 10.
Number 10 is the middle and elementary school property purchase on Rocky Fork Road from Prime Land Company. Rutherford County School Board Attorney Jeff Reed and the school's engineering department has completed the due diligence for the 75 acres of property on Rocky Fork Road in Smyrna from Prime Land Company for the future middle and elementary schools. The property will be purchased at a cost of $35,000 per acre for a total of $2,625,000. This purchase has been funded by the full county commission. Recommend approval of a motion to approve the purchase of 75 acres on Rocky Fork Road in Smyrna from Prime Land Company for a cost of $35,000 per acre for a total of $2,625,000. Jeff Reed, Board Attorney, will schedule and facilitate the closing.
With the motion,
So moved.
Holliday. And Mr. Young. Further discussion.
Before we go any further, Director Odom, could you just remind the public of what generally we're planning on doing with that property?
Yes, we last year saw growth in that Smyrna area and parts of Laverne still at the 3 to 4% range. Was meeting with Chris Treadway today at Rock Springs Middle. He's expecting certainly over 1,100 next year. We know Laverne Middle is over 9. Smyrna Middle is about 9, and so we know that very soon we're going to have to do something about additional capacity, especially in that Smyrna area. And so this property came up as we were looking, and our parents seem to really like where we can cluster schools together. So there was enough property on this site with gas, water, utilities available to it at a price of $35,000 per acre, which is pretty good when school boards look for property. that we think this is a very good opportunity for us to go ahead and take a look at this. So, new first middle school, most likely, with the order that the growth we're seeing, and then an elementary school.
This also ties in nicely with Smyrna Municipality's master plan and their growth and development as well. So I think that we're fortunate, number one, to have the support of the county commission, and we certainly appreciate the county commission funding this, but also the Smyrna Municipality as they continue to grow strategically and allow this to fit into their master plan.
Anybody else? We have a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And number 11.
Number 11 came out of our budget discussions. This is the middle school 6% supplement. The 2015-2016 general purpose school budget includes funding to cover the proposal Mr. Tim Tackett made in the January 2015 to allow up to 3 2% supplements, a total of 6% at our middle schools. The idea is to allot an additional 6% supplement amount per middle school to be disbursed at the principal's discretion based upon the viable activities at their school. The most likely uses would be for bowling, trout, swimming, archery, or dance. None of these have been supplemented at the middle school level. And there's some examples. Example A is School A has an unsupplemented trout program serving 50 students and an unsupplemented bowling program serving 25 students and an unsupplemented archery program serving 30 students. The principal in this instance would be able to provide a 2% supplement to each previously unsupplemented activity. Another example is B, School B. Say it has 55 players active on the football roster with only 2 supplemented assistant coaches, has 26 players active on the softball roster with no supplemented assistant coach, and 32 players on the baseball team with no supplemented assistant coach. The principal in this instance would be able to provide a 2% supplement to each previously unsupplemented assistant coaches. Title IX rules must be considered when assigning these supplements. And some notes. The note, this additional discretionary amount could not be used to raise a current supplement beyond the posted amount. Example, the current supplement for a middle school head football coach is 13%. This additional discretionary amount could not be used to raise a supplement to 14% or higher. Another note, the additional discretionary amount could not be used to fund more than 1 additional coach per activity. An example, the current supplement schedule allows for 2 supplemented assistant football coaches. This additional discretionary amount could not be used to fund more than 1 additional supplemented football assistant coach. So the motion is a recommend approval, a motion to approve the addition of up to 3 2% BS and 5 athletic supplements for a total of 6% at our middle schools to be assigned at the principal's discretion to the viable activities at his or her school subject to Title IX rules and not to be used to increase any current supplements or fund more than 1 additional assistant coach per activity as presented. This gave some site-based management for schools that had certain activities that were very popular at that middle school.
Heard the motion? Mr. Young? Mr. Estes? Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 12, Mr. Odom.
Number 12 is the transportation. Under per Section 8 of the bus contract, which covers the signability of a contract from the contract holder to an individual, the Transportation Department has received a letter from Linda Matatic, contractor of Bus 120, requesting that her daughter-in-law, Catherine Reposa, receive Bus 120's route due to health reasons. Ms. Matatic has held the contract with Rutherford County Schools since 2008. Ms. Reposa is currently the full-time driver and has been a driver since 2013. Recommend approval, the motion to approve the contract for bus number 120 be transferred from Linda Matatic to Catherine Reposa effective immediately.
So moved.
Second.
Moore and Mr. Jordan. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And B.
B has been added from when you had it last night. And of course, we're trying to get buses in place to start school before we meet again. So this is one that's added. Pursuant to Section 16.1 of the Rutherford County Board of Education bus contract, the Transportation Department has received a letter dated July 21st, 2015, from Michelle Coy, contractor of Bus 170, requesting voluntary termination of her contract with the board. The Transportation Department is prepared to offer this contract to the next available person on the appropriate priority list. Recommend approval. The motion is to approve the voluntary termination of the bus contract with Michelle Coy, bus number 170, effective as soon as possible.
Heard the motion?
So moved.
Ms. Moore
Second.
and Mr. Holliday. Which list are we in, Mr. Snell? We are in the second list, okay? All right. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Well, before we do that, Mr. Hodge, I know we're going to the summer law. Any direction that you'd like to give the board? Because I think we'll have a legislative presentation there at least twice, I believe, so.
Good idea what direction we need to go. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Holliday, I believe No Child Left Behind has been replaced.
It is behind. The House acted first and passed their version of a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and then the Senate closely behind, which now puts the measure into a conference committee between the two. The Congress is seating that conference committee now and will hopefully bring a combined piece of legislation back out of that that they'll send to the President here in the next couple of weeks. So I think that it's excellent that we are moving forward. This will result in taking the authority away from the Secretary of Education and placing it back into legislation that then the Secretary of Education will be compelled to follow and be under the direction of. So a lot of details involved in it. Lots of amendments were offered, and there's a lot to digest through it all. Still things to be determined. There are dramatic differences between the House and Senate versions, but overall, I think it'll be a good thing for education.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday. Any questions for Mr. Holliday?
Just to comment, I think this kind of proves, I think, what happens when a bad law or one with many problems is passed without due consideration and without reading it completely and carefully considering things such as we'll have a 100% graduation rate by 2014. I mean, that's impossible. That's not. There's no possible way that could happen, but it's in there.
It is.
And there are a lot of other things in there too about scores and things that I think maybe. Well, I'm getting into the personal opinion here. I think that there is some good in that, and I think the motives were good, but it also is a good way to look at this is how long it takes once a law is passed, and if it proves to be not near as effective as you thought it was going to be or hoped it would be, how long it takes to do something about it. We've been talking about this for seemingly 10 years. And just now, are we maybe approaching the end?
And just to clarify, Mr. Jordan's comments here are about No Child Left Behind, which is what is being replaced. That 100% graduation rate was a part of that legislation, which actually expired in 2009. And since then, we've been on this continuing basis of waivers that have been individually negotiated between the Commissioner of Education for the state of Tennessee and the Secretary of Education for the federal government. Okay? No Child Left Behind has expired. It stands that we should have a 100% graduation rate. That is not feasible. Therefore, what will the state of Tennessee be held to? And annual negotiations set the standard for federal funding in elementary and secondary education since 2009. From those individual negotiations, we got federal overreach into our public schools, and this progress should help us to return to our legislative representatives in Congress representing our interest in putting that forward. One of the key elements, and I don't want to go too far unless there's interest, but one of the key elements is testing, the accountability of testing, and the opt-out of testing. Public schools, we're interested in all of our students sitting for the test that grade our systems and in large part say what an effective job we're doing. And yet some parents are very interested in having the option of being able to opt out of that. That's one of the differences between the House bill and the Senate bill that they've got to work out in conference committee. And so that's an important element that, the Senate bill was very clear that we absolutely need test data, but that test data will not have the penalties attached to it that No Child Left Behind was so famous for. If you don't reach these marks, then we're coming after you. We're going to take over your schools. That is a stark difference in what the Senate has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Holliday.
I think, too, to say, comment on kind of this follow-up, government by waiver is generally a bad idea. Generally, it doesn't work. It can work short-term, maybe, but not long-term. And secondly, I'm just trying to be fair, which, of course, is my middle name, the graduation rate, as a result of this, of insisting on 100%, the rate of graduates did improve because school systems, including ours, attacked it and gosh, we're, well, I don't know the figures for each school, but habitually in the 93, 94, 95% range and higher. Graduation coaches, things of this nature, have improved it. So in that way, maybe No Child Left Behind did have some success there. The pressure, anyway.
Can have some success, but also from that pressure, we saw the controversy in the Atlanta metropolitan school system, where we're so incentivized to make sure that the test scores are moving us in a positive direction that we lose integrity and we have teachers that are changing tests and things of that nature. Likewise, Mr. Odom and I have discussed strategies that may be taking place in the state of Tennessee of transferring seniors out of your school system in order to game the system, if you will, for a higher graduation rate. If you know that senior is going to be challenged to graduate under Tennessee standards, if you can transfer them out to a GED program or something of that nature, then you can kind of game the system. Rutherford County has not participated in any of these things. We have been a system that has achieved with high integrity and still made progress at the very, very high standards that No Child Left Behind put in place. Philosophically, I think that education is moving in the direction of keeping high standards, but taking away that heavy-handed penalty aspect that has resulted in some of these areas of compromised integrity, and that's a good thing.
Child Left Behind had a big stick, but not much carrot. Mr. Odom, this is just off the cuff as far as with all the outdoor athletic activities right now, the heat limitations of our students.
We have the TSSAA has an app which any parents or others that's listening, if you'd like to look at it, I looked at it. Actually, a fellow asked me at church Sunday night because he was going to take his grandchildren to football practice. I said, let me show you an app that'll show you the temperature range, which is the heat indexed app, is what it is, which combines humidity and the heat together. And I think it's about 105 or something like that. And Mr. Evans over there works with our informing our coaches and all, and we've done a lot of preparation for this. Why don't you tell them quickly, and that may help parents that's listening, what the process, how that works.
Mr. Tackett has been training with the athletic directors at each school to monitor, to teach them how to monitor that. The TWSAA also puts out a chart that's really easy to use, that where you can look up temperature and relative humidity, and it tells you what the index is. And then they have an app now to make it even easier. A lot of the coaches also have bought the heat index gauges where they can look at any time at what the heat index says. But basically, anything over 104 heat index, we don't have outdoor practices. That's the TWSAA rule. We've extended that to any student activity that's outside, not just TWSAA sports. So bands, ROTC, cheerleading, all those kinds of things. They have to move them inside or cancel. And the coaches have been pretty vigilant about that. And Mr. Tackett and I talked about it yesterday. He sent out a reminder to the athletic directors just to say we're above the cutoff and just make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. And they've all been, no one wants to see anybody get hurt. So this has been pretty routine because the last 5 or 6 summers has been this way, during July typically.
I just thought it'd be a good reminder that the central office, certainly that's been on the radar with this heat.
They also have a phase in that it's not just when it heats that one that all practice stops. There's some stages in that when the temperature gets to a certain point that they have to take for water and 30-minute breaks and that sort of thing. So the TWSAA has been quite involved in making that happen. That's what Mr. Tackett and Mr. Evans and them doing, working with the coaches so that everyone understands that.
They have a gray level, a blue level, and a red level. And those, depending on the temperature and the heat index, there are different things that coaches are required to do. So many water breaks, wet towels, fewer pads, things like that.
Oh, and the insurance was not on the list because we did not meet in July. We do meet again in the latter part of August. Okay, so we will have an insurance meeting, and that will be on the agenda for the next board meeting.
You may want to relate to the other board members when we spoke last night. You saw in there the 10% increase in insurance. The insurance works on the calendar year, whereas our budget works on the fiscal year. So where the 10% was showing will be a 10% increase January 1, 2016. Am I correct, Jeff, in that? Make sure.
Yes. And then also, though, that 1% shift, drop in the employer pay, the increase will be.
Is this the 4th year that we've dropped a percentage point? Because we started at 90.
Yes, yes, sir.
Now
Yeah.
dependent is now paid at 80.
Starting in January, that will drop to 85%.
Okay.
And the commission voted to keep that dropping until it's down to 80%.
Just one last thing, Chairman. Just so we know what's on the horizon, the Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, was so impressed with the reception that was there for the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It was passed 81-19 on the Senate floor. That he went back to the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee and said, what have you got next? Because this really went well, bring more of this. And they have already turned their attention now to post-secondary education, colleges, and some of the elements that they're going to be looking at there as they work on legislation have to do with dual enrollment and how much college credit can be earned in a high school setting. There is a lot of interest at the congressional level to reduce the level of student debt, and one of the most effective ways of doing that is for those high-achieving students to be able to capture those credit hours in the junior and senior year of high school. Rutherford County is already ahead of the game in that, and as such, we should be one of the most outspoken advocates for how to structure that legislation going forward.
Anybody else? Okay. All righty, we have Summer Law Institute this weekend, so we'll be garnering a lot of information here in just the next few days, and look forward to seeing everyone attend. If there's not anything else, we pray that you'll be safe, and we stand adjourned.